Hello, it seems you have stumbled across my first YouTube video ever. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, but I love books and I want to talk about them, so I thought I'd bring you along for the journey and do a weekly reading vlog. Current read is Euripides. I love his plays, he's one of my favourite Greek playwrights. I love the Greeks, love Greek mythology. Let me show you my Greek mythology shelf. Here she is. Lies We Sing to the Sea is one of the best Greek retellings, followed by Ariadne. Circe is great as well, and I love Natalie Haynes. Okay, now that I've proved to you that I like Greek mythology, I've read Medea, which I already read because I did classical civilization for my A-levels and I loved it. Medea is my favourite Greek tragedy of all time. If you're looking for a Greek tragedy to start with, I would go with Medea. It's crazy, it's hilarious, it's so ahead of its time. The next play which I finished this morning was Hecate. It's about the once Queen of Troy and how she has one last show of power, even as an enslaved woman, in avenging the death of her son. The play that I'm now reading is Electra and I aim to finish this book today. So that's my goal. I'm going to take you with me. Let's go read. Okay, I'm back and I have finished my book. This was amazing, this was incredible. I think this is the best collection of Greek plays that I have ever read. I usually write a little review at the back of my books when I finish them, so I rated this whole collection 4 stars. Whether Euripides knows it or not, his stories are dripping with this feminist viewpoint and they're so progressive and I love them because of that. I think that the conversation between the women in Hecate was so interesting in the way that the women spoke about death being a better alternative to slavery, and that was really at the forefront of the play, and I thought that that was such an important topic to be discussing. I really enjoyed Electra as well. That was a complex moral play, more so than a tragedy, and it kind of spoke about how even if something is just, it's not necessarily justified, or even if something is just, it's not necessarily right. So there was a specific quote which basically said that Clytemnestra's death was just, she deserved to die, that was her fate, but the actions of her children killing her, that wasn't just, that wasn't right, and so they will suffer for it even though she had to die. Heracles was definitely my least favourite. Anything that has a man as the centre of attention I don't really care for. I think this overall was a really solid collection of plays that I would absolutely recommend. I have absolutely no plans next week and I've set myself the goal of trying to read a book a day for the entire week, so I'm going to put back my current read and find the 7 books that I want to read so I can show you. Okay, I have my 7 books. The first book I'm really excited for is by one of my favourite authors of all time, which is Tracy Chevalier. I love her books. I've read Girl with the Pearl Earring, Falling Angels and Remarkable Creatures now, and I have adored all of them. Girl with the Pearl Earring is one of my favourite books in the world. Falling Angels is what I'm going to be writing my dissertation on next year. Honestly, I just adore her books, so I have really high expectations for this book. It is about an artist who goes to live with a family and it's the commission of a lifetime, but he gets caught up amongst all the friendships and the relationships and all the drama of the family that he lives with. So it sounds really exciting. Tracy Chevalier often takes historical figures and creates a story out of their life, which I absolutely love. The next book is a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm not the biggest fan of crime, thriller kind of books, but this is Strangers on a Train by Patricia Highsmith. This is about 2 strangers who meet on a train and plot to murder people for each other. So one of them is going to kill the other one's wife and one of them is going to kill the other one's dad. This sounds really messy, really good, and it's quite short, so I thought I'd include it in this challenge. The next book is a little bit of a longer one, but I've wanted to read it for so many years. It's been on my TBR for about 5 years that I had to include it, because otherwise I just feel like I'm not going to read it. But this is another historical fiction. This book is about a girl who suffered years of brutal hardship in a hospital, and she finally gets released and comes across the policeman who saved her in the first place. But she's hiding a terrible secret. She's a murderer, and he doesn't know that she's a murderer, but he's going to be the one person who will find out. I'm extremely excited for this. I think it's going to be a really fun time. It was not fun at all. That book was so sad. It was low-key heartbreaking and traumatic. The next book that I have on this list is really special to me. So my mum went to a book event that I couldn't go to a couple of years ago because I had exams, and she got this book for me, which is called Boyfriends, and he signed it for me and wished me good luck on my exams, and I've still not read it, and it's been about 2 years, so I am very excited to read this. I think it's going to be quite sad. I know that the author lost a really dear friend to him, and this book is about that. It's a memoir of joy, grief, and male friendship. The next book has a really funny story behind it. So this is Black Vodka by Deborah Levy, and I actually got this book when I was visiting the uni that I go to for an open day, and they gave it to me for free, and that is one of the only reasons why I picked that uni to go to, because it gave me free books. And to think that that was one of the reasons that I went, and my life would be completely different if they hadn't have given me these free books. So thank you to my uni for that. Still haven't read it, but this book is about love, and the author writes essays on how love changes us and what love means, and I love writing like that, so I think I'm going to start with this one. The next 2 books I have are obviously Greek mythology books. We have Children of Jocasta by Natalie Haynes. I love Natalie Haynes. She's an incredible author. I listen to her podcast, Natalie Haynes Stands Up for the Classics. If you haven't listened to it but you love classics, it's absolutely hilarious. I laugh out loud frequently at that podcast, so listen to it if you can. One of my friends read this in one sitting on the plane over to Athens, which is so cool, and I've wanted to read it ever since, so I can't wait to read this as well. Lastly, I have a non-fiction, which I'm really hoping is interesting. This is Enraged, and this is Why Violent Times Need Ancient Greek Myths, and I thought that it sounded really interesting. I really don't know what to expect going into this, but I guess we'll see, and I'm quite excited. And there we have it. That's the 7 books that I want to try and read next week. This is a lot. Good morning. Welcome to my garden. I have got my morning coffee out here, and it's lovely and breezy, and the sun is shining. It's beautiful weather, and I am going to start reading Black Vodka this morning. Hello? What? This is Twigs. This is my cat. I just finished Black Vodka. I read the whole thing outside this morning. This book was very interesting. I ended up rating it a 2.5 stars. I thought it was going to be a series of essays on love. I was completely wrong. It's actually a collection of short stories about normal people and their normal lives, which was really interesting. There were a lot of stories that grasped my attention, and I wasn't bored throughout the book. However, because the stories were so short, there's 10 short stories in 120 pages, I felt a little bit like, I don't know, I felt a little bit like it was difficult to connect with the characters or to even form an opinion on any of the characters. One of the ones that I liked was Stardust Nation. This one was basically about a boss and one of his co-workers, and how the boss had a really traumatic upbringing, and one of his co-workers, when he's told things of people's pasts, he takes it on and believes that it's his past. And it was essentially about how this boss couldn't deal with his own trauma and kept telling his co-worker all of his trauma, so the co-worker took on his grief and started grieving his past for him, which I think was a really interesting exploration of different mindsets in terms of how people process trauma. Another one which I think was really good was Pillow Talk. This was basically about a man who loves his girlfriend and they're about to go long distance, and while he's in another country he sleeps with another woman, and you don't see much into his thoughts, you don't see him feel any guilt, he just does it. He expects everything to be the same, everything to be normal. Very weird, and then they kind of just carry on as they are. I thought it was really sad and depressing. They're all really depressing stories about, I guess, the hardships and about the hardships of love, and I guess the really bleak reality of love. Yeah, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I think that really affected my rating for it. So I'm glad that I finally read it. Wasn't my favourite book. end of Monday and I've given myself a little bit of a head start with Strangers on a Train. I'm really enjoying this so far. I've read 50 pages and it's not what I expected it to be, but in a good way. I like the writing style. So I'm gonna go to sleep for the night and I will see you tomorrow. Good morning, it's Tuesday. I have my coffee and we're just gonna get straight into reading. It's about 10 AM and I have to finish this today. I just reached the halfway point for this book and I'm gonna stop and have lunch, but this book is insane and I'm loving it so much more than I thought I would. Like, it's such a tale of obsession and insanity. Essentially one guy blackmailing the other guy through fear to be like, you will kill my dad, and it's so crazy to be in the mind of someone that disturbed and that deranged as he forces someone to kill someone. I just read a really tense bit. I was like, it's really good. I'm actually starting to feel a little insane myself because I've been consumed by this all day long. This is the only thing that I have read. This is the only thing that I've done, and it was crazy. It was so immersive. I felt like I was there. I felt like I was actually in the characters' minds, like they were real people. This is such a good book. I can't believe it's been sitting on my shelf for years and I've not read it. I decided to rate it 4 stars. This was just better than anything that I could have imagined it to be. It was reckless, it was messy. This was a tale of obsession and paranoia and how fear eats away at you and does not leave you alone, how you can't get past guilt, and it was just insane. It shows 2 men's descent into insanity and they are completely unable to leave each other alone. Definitely something going on there, especially with the main character, Charles Bruno. He is obsessed. He is so in love with Guy. It's juicy. I was eating this up. It's so good. The book really criticizes the boredom of the rich as well, and how you can be given everything in life and still be unsatisfied, still be incredibly empty inside. And if you haven't read this, you should. This is one of my first crime novels that I've ever read. If you haven't already gathered, I'm quite a slow reader, so I was reading about 30 to 40 pages in an hour. So finishing a book like this in one day is quite an achievement. So I'm not going to read any more today. Happy Wednesday. I'm about to leave and go on a walk. I am reading Boyfriends. I'm listening to it on audiobook as well. It's narrated by the author and it's such an immersive experience to listen to it whilst reading alongside it, because this is such a personal experience of grief. So it's only fitting really to listen to the author narrate his own story. So I'm taking this with me, I'm listening to it on my walk, and I'm going to sit down and have a read through it if I find a tree or a bench somewhere. So let's go. From the park and I have finished reading this. I didn't expect to finish this while I was out, but well, to tell the truth, the schools were finishing and I didn't want to come across any school children on the way home. So I hid in the park until they left and finished this. I'm currently eating a yogurt bowl snack. I actually don't like Greek yogurt, like at all. I don't know why I've done this to myself. I was just so hungry and I didn't know what to make. This book was beautifully written. I listened to the audiobook, which is narrated by the author himself, and he has such a distinct writing voice that it was even more immersive to be listening to his voice and have the page come to life in a way. And it spoke so wonderfully on male friendship and what it means to lose someone and how personal grief is. I wasn't planning on tabbing it either, but there were just some quotes which were so beautiful that I wanted to tab them. For example, I'll read you something literally from the first page. While the friendships we forge inhabit us, there's no escaping that one day we'll be without them. They may go kindly, with expectant effervescence, or, as with you, ungentle and sudden. Either way, grief will come for the heart exposed, like hungry seabirds for a carcass washed ashore. That is the vibe of the book. I think what most affected me about this book is the fact that the author doesn't encroach upon his friend's life, and this is about his friend's suicide and how he deals with that grief, but he doesn't at any point pry into his friend's privacy, pry into his mind for the reader's benefit. He completely celebrates his life, and it's a wonderful tribute to his friend. I will say that with certain parts of the book, because it's obviously this author's memories and childhood and friendships leading up to this pivotal moment in his life, because obviously as a reader we weren't there in his life, a lot of the memories are so personal that I felt a bit like I was intruding, and I felt like I couldn't connect with them because obviously this is his real life, it's not a random character in a book. So I'm rating it 3.5 stars just on the basis of that, but I still think this was a gorgeous story that captured grief, especially within friendships, so well, and I would highly recommend this if you haven't already read it. Good morning everyone, it is Thursday today and I have my coffee. I'm feeling pretty tired. I'm gonna read Enraged. I've read the introduction and the first 2 chapters, I think, of this book, and it's really good. The book argues how Greek myths kind of offer this opportunity for us to look at something objectively, because we don't really care about the characters or the outcome in any way that's personal or relevant to us. We kind of only care about them as characters in this fictional world. So that allows us to look at these tales objectively and creatively without bias. The author also speaks about how the gods are, in a way, an embodiment of psychological processes. So when Achilles is about to murder Agamemnon because he's in this rage, Athena comes to him and says, don't do that, in the simplest of summaries. And basically the author is arguing that, like, is this just a physical representation of what's going on in Achilles' head? And then she speaks about the complexities of different emotions that we feel, specifically ambition, and how ambition is what gets us out of bed in the morning, it's what motivates us, it's what pushes us to do things, but it can also cause so much harm and can be so destructive. And she goes on to say that this ambition is shown in the fact that humans are mortal, and how human mortality is what motivates people and what fuels ambition, because people want to be remembered, people want to do what they can in this one life. She says that as the story proceeds, it will compel us to consider whether the benefits of warfare justify the costs, whether warfare evokes the best in us or embodies the worst in us, whether warfare reveals magnificent human achievement or constitutes a failure of the human intellect and imagination. And then it kind of says that the Iliad also shows what we look for in leaders in comparison to what we look for in ourselves, which I think is really interesting. It is now Friday. I didn't manage to finish the book that I started yesterday, but I finished it this morning instead. So I'm going to talk about that, and Twigs is here too because he wants to talk about the book as well. I ended up rating this 3 stars. This wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, which I think is the case for most of the books that I've read this week. Like, none of them have been exactly what I thought they were going to be. Don't get me wrong, I really did like it, but I felt like it was really repetitive and very much over-focused on just retelling the plot of a lot of famous Greek classics. I think it was a very informative, simplistic analysis, especially if you're a beginner in this kind of stuff. I think that this is a good introduction into analysing old texts like the Iliad, but it did just repeat itself a lot. It did go over detailing of the same plot over and over, and I feel like that was a massive part of the writing, and I think it definitely overshadowed the analysis at times. I did think that this book was going to relate to the modern world a lot more, but it kind of just alluded to the modern world and how we could maybe implicate thinking about Greek classics in our modern life. But it didn't really go into depth with that. I thought that that analysis was a little bit vague. However, there were some really interesting things about language which I didn't know, so I'm going to tell you about that. Apparently the letter J doesn't exist in the ancient Greek alphabet, which is so interesting. So Ajax in Greek is, I'm going to butcher this, AS. It's like AIAS, which firstly sounds a little bit like the way that the Greeks would write a cry of suffering. Also, it means always. It means like solidity and something that's absolute. And how this great warrior, Ajax from the Trojan War, killed himself because he didn't win Achilles' armour. I think that's a little bit dramatic, personally. It represents the fact that his name means absolute, his name means always, and he can't cope with change. And the reason that he doesn't get Achilles' armour is because of a sort of democracy in terms of the fact that the Greek leaders vote, and they vote for Odysseus getting the armour instead of it going to him by right, because he is the second strongest Greek warrior after Achilles. Another thing is that the ancient Greek word for glory is kleos, or that's what I've always known it to be, but apparently there are two different versions of the word glory in ancient Greek. One of them being like kudos, no, it's not kudos, being like kudos, the other one being kleos, and kudos is when it's a God-given glory, and kleos is a humanity-given glory. So when you're reading texts like the Iliad, I had no idea that there was that distinction. I think that's so important because it really makes a difference in what you're reading. For example, there's a scene in the Iliad when Odysseus and Diomedes get back from slaughtering a whole camp of Trojans while they sleep. And I can't remember who it is, but someone says to these men that they have gained kudos in doing this, and that means glory, but it's the God-given glory. So with that distinction, that means that what they did is not necessarily something that humanity would grant them glory for, but something that the gods would definitely grant them glory for, which is kind of backhanded in a way because the gods suck. I wish there was more of that. I wish there was more analysis of ancient Greek language. Apart from that, this fell a little bit flat for me, but still definitely glad that I read it. The next book that I'm going to read is Lily. I'm hoping to get maybe halfway through this today. I am so excited for this, and I really hope it doesn't disappoint. I have wanted to read this for years and I'm finally going to start it, so fingers crossed it lives up to my expectations. Okay, it's like 1 AM, I need to go to sleep, but I almost managed to read half. I read 120 pages. This is so good. It's so sad. Like, the way that the children are treated in this is so sad. It's basically giving us Lily's backstory, and you know that she's a murderer, but you don't know who she's murdered yet, but it's playing on her mind a lot, and we are just seeing a lot of her past right now, and I am so here for it. This is everything I hoped that it would be. I've just finished reading Lily and I decided to rate this 4 stars. I want to refrain from saying that I thoroughly enjoyed this book because it was heartbreaking. It was gut-wrenchingly sad, and I really didn't expect that going into the book. What I think was incredible about this book was it was so immersive, and immediately I was transported into this world. I love anything set in the Victorian time. I love Victorian classics. I love learning about how people lived their lives in the Victorian period. I don't know why, but I'm just fascinated with the 1800s basically. And I learned a lot about how children were treated in this time, which is not nice. They're treated awfully. I love the hope and sunshine that comes from the way that this author describes Rookery Farm, which is the setting for a little bit of the book. I think it's so beautiful. As a whole, this story as a historical fiction was beautiful, and I loved Lily. I loved the characterization. I think the storytelling was really well done. However, I have a few qualms with this book. My first qualm is the age gap romance, which I feel like wasn't a necessary addition. It's a 17-year-old girl and a 40-year-old man, and it makes no sense. Even in that time, it makes no sense that it would even be a romantic connection when it's supposed to be this like protective father and daughter connection. They're not actually father and daughter, can I just clarify? This 40-year-old is basically a guardian. He kind of oversees Lily's life because he's the one that saves her, and so when they reconnect and there's romantic potential there, I thought that was really weird. and I don't think it needed to be added into the story. So any romantic potential was just icky before it could even be considered romantic. My second qualm is that the blurb is incredibly misleading on what this book is about. It's labelled as this kind of mystery about a murderer who's scared of being found out, but when you read the book, it's a murder of necessity. It's not cold-blooded murder, it's not a mystery, it's a heartbreaking aspect of Lily's life, and the reason that she does it and all that leads up to this murder are just so sad. And the book is not presented as that at all, it's not advertised as that. So while I still really love the book, I don't think that it's advertised in the right way at all, and I was very shocked with the subject matter of the book. My third qualm is I think it's too cruel. It's very visceral, it's gross. The more that I think about it, the more I think I need to rate it a 3.5 stars, because Lily goes through unspeakable things at the age of like 9, and I just think that the way that they present Maud, who's the nurse who oversees all of the children at this children institution, I think they made her way too cruel, because then I was just reading the book in disgust and shock, and I was like, oh, okay. It was just so sad. And Lily, I really don't know how to feel actually. So to sum up, rating is inconclusive. I don't quite know what I'm gonna fully rate it yet, and I definitely know that this was beautiful writing, beautiful storytelling, and as a historical fiction was incredible. However, the romantic potential was strange. The subject matter, not at all like the blurb, and also a lot. So I don't know. In other words, definitely know my feelings on this. I had to get this. I was in Tesco's today and I finished the show yesterday, and I don't usually read romance, but the chokehold that series that Off Campus has on me, I don't even know. I love these two characters, I love the show, and I just had to get it as proof of me loving the show, because I don't even know if I'll read this, but like, God, is it an amazing show. Okay, it is now Sunday. I haven't managed to read that much today. I was in Kent visiting my baby cousin for the first time, and he is adorable. I had such a lovely day. I did actually manage to read a small novella in the car on the way up there. It's called The Keeper of the Ledger, and I was lucky enough to meet the author of this when I went to a book event in Buxton. The novella is essentially about the Victorian obsession with the eye and how the eye can capture the last image that it sees before death and preserve it. The novella follows the storyline of the man who retrieves the bodies and gives them to the doctor, and it's essentially his journey through this discovery. The doctor is very weird, very creepy gothic vibes, and as the main character goes about his daily life, he is followed by this immense dark shadow. It's actually really creepy, and that shadow is death. Death follows him everywhere. There are a lot of plot twists, it's a real page turner, and I was genuinely creeped out, and it only took me about an hour to read. So if you do get the chance to sign up to the publishing company, it's called Marauder Books. If you sign up, you actually get this novella for free. So if you have the time to, I would highly recommend it. It was really good. Now that Sunday is done, we have officially come to the end of this vlog, and I managed to read 5 out of the 7 books that I planned to, which I am really proud about. This is probably the most I've ever achieved reading wise in a week, so I'm very happy with how this week turned out. The 2 books that I didn't get to were The Lady and the Unicorn and The Children of Jocasta, but I plan on reading these next week and the week after, so do not worry, I will be reading them and you will be getting a vlog on these books. I am still going to say that I succeeded in this challenge because I managed to read the 5 books on my TBR, a small novella, and I also finished Euripides the day that I started this challenge. So I make the rules and I'm going to say that I did it. So what I'm going to do is rapid fire my reviews and rank the books that I read this week from worst to best, and then I'm going to wrap up this video. Okay, so my least favourite book that I read this week was Black Vodka. I rated this 2.5 stars. I didn't really connect with the characters and I thought it was a bit too short to create a connection with any of the characters, but I do still think there were some interesting stories. I definitely wasn't bored, I just don't think that this was anything special. The next book I rated a 3 stars, and this is Enraged. I definitely think this had some interesting interesting perspectives and I loved what was said about language, but I do think that the majority of this book was just recounting the plot of things like the Iliad, and I think that that was a bit repetitive and I didn't enjoy that aspect too much, but I still think this is a really good read. The next book I read was Boyfriends. I rated this 3.5 stars. I think that this was a beautiful exploration of grief. I would highly recommend listening to the audiobook if you can. It's narrated by the author and it was such an immersive experience. Next I have Lily. I rated this a 3.5 stars. I originally rated it 4 stars, but upon reflection I think I want to lower my rating. I think as a historical fiction this was incredible. It had beautiful writing and beautiful storytelling, but I wasn't a fan of the age gap romance, and I also think this book was just a little bit too cruel. Definitely not what I was expecting going into it, so please look up trigger warnings if you do read it, but I would recommend. And lastly, the best book that I read this week was Strangers on a Train. I rated this 4 stars. This was so fun, so messy, so obsessive. I absolutely loved it. I think the characterization was incredible. I think the plot really keeps you gripped. And for someone who doesn't really like mysteries, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I have not stopped thinking about it all week. That brings me to the end of my first ever YouTube video. If you have made it to the end, I am so grateful. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I really hope that you come to enjoy this channel, and thank you so much for being here with me, and I will see you in the next one.